Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today I want to talk to you about our next assignment, which is going to be really about 1 and 2 point perspective. If you look at our learning target here, you're going to see that it's simply to understand 1 and 2 point perspective. In addition to that, you're going to be able to apply 1 and 2 point perspective and kind of know the rules of it. So that's really our big target. Some things to know. These are more or less vocabulary that we'll be using, the way that we'll talk about the drawings. The first thing is a vanishing point. The second one is a horizon line. And the third one is that vertical lines are always vertical when you're doing a perspective drawing. So to kind of give you an example, if you look at this, I'm going to kind of invent my own sheet of paper here. Imagine that this is a sheet of paper. A vanishing point is a point on the paper or in the drawing which many of the lines are going to lead to. I say many because not all of them. But a vanishing point is one where more or less your diagonal lines are going to lead to the vanishing point. In 1 point perspective, which I'm doing right now, you only have 1 point. Some of you may have encountered this in the past. The second thing is that you're going to have a horizon line, like this. Mine's a little bumpy. I should probably be using a ruler. Once you start yours, you're going to be using a ruler too. But just to kind of get our general understanding, you'll get the gist of this. Once you have your vanishing point and your horizon line, then you can start your drawing. With a 1 point perspective, your vertical lines are always going to be vertical. So if I make a vertical line right here, it's going to be straight up and down. It doesn't matter where I do it or what size. In 1 point perspective, your horizontal lines are also going to be horizontal, which seems pretty obvious, but you'll see when we get into 2 points perspective that changes a little bit. Once I have that kind of understood, 1 point perspective is simply a way, 1 point perspective is simply a way to create depth to your drawing. So if you imagine all diagonal lines leading to your vanishing point, it will make it seem as though it's getting smaller and therefore getting further away from us. Then from there, again, I can draw, especially in 1 point perspective, vertical lines are always going to be vertical. And then horizontal lines will be horizontal. So I can go like that. And then ultimately what I can do, if this were a drawing of something realistic, I can eliminate those lines. I can erase them, and then I can have a fairly accurate 1 point perspective drawing. I can do the same thing over here. I would want to use a ruler on these lines, but to save time and to give you an idea, it would work a little bit like that. And then I can draw those lines. It doesn't matter where you put that box, your vertical lines are going to be vertical and your horizontal are going to be horizontal with 1 point perspective. Now, things change a little bit when you have 2 point perspective. Oftentimes on your sheet of paper, going back to the sheet of paper, oftentimes on the sheet of paper, your vanishing points in 2 point perspective are off the page. For our purposes, I think the easiest way to kind of conceptualize it is to put them right on the edge of the paper. That way we can work within the confines of our paper. But you have the same sorts of things. You have vanishing points. In this case, you have 2 of them because it's a 2 point perspective. So you have your vanishing point, you have your horizon line, and then everything that you draw will go to one of those 2. So instead of the 1, it will go to the 2. If I want to draw another box, another square, like as an example, the easiest way is to start with just a vertical line. If you remember, all your vertical lines are going to be vertical in both 1 point and 2 point perspective. From here, I can start drawing, and these are the lines that I would want to draw with a ruler, and this is why, because they'll start getting a little goofy if you don't. But again, to save time, I'm going to, in fact, I will, because that's further away, and I don't want it to be too confusing. So I would use a ruler here. I would use a ruler here. And then again, vertical lines are going to be vertical. So I could draw a line there and there to start closing in my box. Now it's about at this point where you go, it looks like something's missing here, and that is the bottom of the box, which gets a little bit weird because I've got to run the opposite side. If I'm drawing this side of the box, I got to run that line to that vanishing point in order to box in the end of that. So it's got to work a little bit like that. And then same with this one. This line's got to go to the opposite vanishing point. These always look a little crass on a whiteboard, but you start to get the idea of how if you do that, and then you eliminate all of these other lines here, you could start getting in a 2-point perspective box. And I could, if this were done in a pencil, I would go in and probably shade them a little bit and stuff like that. But it looks as though it's going further away, so it's creating depth out of that. Here's an example that I want you to do for your sketchbook assignment. I want you to do, you can use boxes if you want, you can put them in different locations or in the kind of the same area or whatever, but I want you to create on one page a 1-point perspective drawing, and then on the second page, a 2-point perspective drawing. And I can of course help you with that. The last thing I want to say about 1 and 2-point perspective is if you look over here, you'll see already a drawing of a hallway. And this is ultimately what we're going to lead to. I want you to do the sketchbook assignment first because then we'll transfer easier once we get into the hallway and you're looking down the hall and trying to interpret it. I have a completed drawing here because I'm going to kind of go backwards so you can see how this student worked. If you look at this is a 1-point perspective drawing. I can't know exactly where the vanishing point is because I didn't draw this. However, it looks like it's probably somewhere in here. If I took a ruler and I started looking at all of these lines, I can see that most of them lead to somewhere right about in here. So I could take the edge of where the floor meets the wall, and I could probably draw a line that's really close to it. I'm off here a little bit, but that's because I'm not using a ruler. Even this poster, or whatever this is hanging on the wall in this drawing, there's a line right there, and a line right there. And if we kept following that line, we would see that go right to that vanishing point because it's getting further away from us. We could do that on the floor. We could do that with any diagonal line in this whole composition. Remember, the vertical lines are always vertical and the horizontal are always horizontal. In this case, it's the same thing. Oops. In this case, it's the same thing, except for that this is a 2-point perspective. This gets a little bit more complicated, but you can see, I'm going to start over here, kind of see what we're doing. Okay, just kidding. This gets a little bit more complicated, but you can see how the vanishing point is probably, if you follow this, one of the vanishing points is probably right on the edge of that paper, and the other one looks like it's about right here. And we could follow, all of these lines leading to there, and likewise, all of these lines leading to that one. The edge of these right here would actually lead all the way to this one, just as though we were creating that box. The vertical lines are still vertical, but look at the top of this door. Right there, and then it leads to that vanishing point. The best way to do this one, if you want to give this one a shot, which it's interesting, is to sit, obviously where 2 hallways go in different, directions. Otherwise, you can plop down if you're going to try a 1-point perspective and just look down the hallway and try to draw, kind of marry the technique of 1 and 2-point perspective with drawing from observation, because both of those things are happening there. Okay, I'm sure there's going to be a number of questions as we go on, but for now, go ahead and get your sketchbook and start with the 2 sketches of 1 and 2-point perspective, and let's see how we do. If you've got questions, let me know. And remember, your whole target is to understand, the 1 and the 2-point perspective techniques.